We are live from Moshe Shabbos, Pashas Kiseitze. Get the set up over here. Okay, gewaltig. Gesagt der Heilige Mishnah. On top, pay Aleph from base, 3 lines from the top. Hakoina Shnei Ilonois, Besoich Chadechaverai. Someone buys 2 Ilonois in the soda of his friend. Laloch is Hareza Loi Konakarka. That's a purchase of exclusively trees. He has no land rights other than those rights to sustain his tree. But once the tree dies, the owner of the land can say, cut off your tree and take it out of my property. So basically, it's a temporary kinyan payers on the tree. Rav Meir Eimer, Kanakarka. When you buy 2 trees, we don't look at it like it's a purchase of 2 trees. Rather, it includes the land underneath the trees and around the trees. So in fact, you bought a piece of property that happens to have 2 trees on it. Going back to the Tanakam, where you only bought the actual trees, what if these trees grow and their branches extend in all directions, very far, and they cast a great shade, almost like an eclipse, on the property around it? So what it's doing is it's damaging the property around it because it's creating all the shade, and the field around it requires sunlight. The halacha is, since I bought the tree, what am I buying when I'm buying a tree from somebody in this property? I'm buying the rights to maintain that tree until it dies. Well, that means I'm allowed to leave the tree the way it is, even though it's to the detriment of the property. It's being yoinik from the property. It's causing shade over the property. That's all part of what I bought. What if a branch starts growing out of the trunk of the tree, almost like a new tree being created? It belongs to the owner of the tree. It grew out of his tree. But what if a tree grew out of the roots of the tree? So you have the roots of this main tree that he bought that runs horizontally underneath the surface of the earth. And maybe 10 feet away from this tree, out of the root, grew vertically up another tree. So if you look at it from the outside, from the surface, it looks like an independent tree. If you dig below the surface, you'll see that it's actually growing out of one of the roots of the tree that this Laker bought. Nevertheless, Shal Balakarka belongs to the Balakarka. And the Rashbam explains, the Kiban de Mitachas Lakarka, Yosy, since it's growing up from underneath the Karka, Mikarkoi Godol, we say it grew from the Karka of the Moicher, and it doesn't belong to the person who bought the tree. Vimesu, what if the tree dies? Ein Lakarka. The Lakeach has no rights to the Karka, meaning he can't replant another tree. But Kana Shloisha, what if you bought 3 trees? That's already not buying trees. That's already buying a piece of property, Kana Karka. You're kind the land. How much of the land, how long, how big, that's all going to be discussed in the Gemara. Higdiloi, then Yishper. Now that I bought a piece of property, if I bought a piece of property that happens to have 3 trees on it, and my trees are now, their branches are extending out over your property, then you have a right to cut them down because I bought the land from you. I didn't buy any rights in your property to sustain my tree. I bought a piece of land that happened to have had 3 trees on it. Therefore, any infringement onto your property by my trees, you can cut it down. Since I own the property, the person who bought these 3 trees bought a piece of property. So anything that grows, whether it's out of the trunk, whether it's out of the roots, it belongs to the person who bought the property. The mesu, and therefore, if the trees die, yesh lekaka, I own the property, and therefore I can plant once again in my property. I can do whatever I want. Zok the Heilige Gemara. Tanan also. Hakoinish neilonis. This is a Mishnah in Bikurim. Hakoinish neilonis besoich shol chaverei. If you buy 2 ilonis in the property of your friend, Maybe you do bring Bikurim, but ve'enoi kairei, you can't read the Parsha of Bikurim. And the Rashbam tells us, because we have to say, Reishis Pri Ha'adama Asher Nasatali. It grew out of the land that you gave me. The problem is, it's not my land. That's why it's maybe the Einoi Kairi. So it's perfectly consistent with the Tanakama of our Mishnah. The Tanakama of our Mishnah says, if you buy two ulanois, you bought two trees, but you don't have any land. If you don't have any land, you can't say Asher Nasatali. We can say a little bit, this is the Lublina strikes again, because this is what we learned Shabbos Bar Mincha today. Let's have a look at the pasuk. V'lakachtam ereishis pri kol pri ha'adama asher tovim me'artzecha asher Hashem Elokecha noisen lach v'sabta batena v'halachta al hamokim asher yivcha Hashem Elokecha l'shakin shmoi sham. And then we say in the nusach is v'ata hine hevesi es reishis pri ha'adama asher nasatali. But the problem is, if you don't own the property, it's not ha'adama Asher Nasatali. And therefore, consistent with our Mishnah, where our Mishnah says that you don't own the karka, it's maybe Beinei Kair. Now you might ask me, if it's not Mino Adama, so why is it maybe? If it's Einei Kair, it should be Einei maybe as well. The Gemara is going to discuss that question. Meir Eimer, maybe Vikari. Again, it's very consistent with our Mishnah, because our Mishnah says that Meir holds you're kind of the karka if you buy only two ilamis. The problem that we might have is, why is the Mishnah Bikurim telling us this halacha? All the Mishnah Bikurim needs to tell us that if it's your land you can bring, if it's not your land you can't bring. Why is the Mishnah there getting into our sugya Bava Basra when it's my land, when it's not my land? In Bava Basra it teaches us when it's my land, when it's not. And then all the Gemara, all the Mishnah Bikurim says, if it's your land, you can bring, if not, no. So that's Gemara's question a little bit later. Amar Yehuda Amar Shmuel. Mechayev Hayir Reb Meir, don't think Pshat and Reb Meir, why he says maybe B'kairei. It's because you own the land. No, because even if you didn't own the land, Reb Meir would also say maybe B'kairei. Mechayev Hayir Reb Meir, af b'lekeach peiros, and the Bach changes the gears and it's very consequential. Reb Meir, af b'lekeach peiros, and the Bach says, ha'ilon. Even if you went to somebody and said, I want to buy the pears of your tree, you're not even buying the tree, you are also going to bring Bikurim and you're going to say the Parsha of Bikurim. Mimai, how does Rabbi Yehuda or Shmuel know that this is what Rabbi Meir meant? A moment ago, we fartized Rabbi Meir very beautifully. It's an outgrowth of what he said in Bava Basra, that it's your property. If you buy two trees, you bought the property, and therefore you could say Asher Nasatali. Now, Rabbi Yehuda Shmuel wants to say, no, it has nothing to do with that. Even if it's not your property, you could still be maybe declared. How would Rabbi Yehuda Shmuel know that? The Torah is because of the kasha we just asked. Why does the Mishnah Bikurim need to tell me a halacha that we already know from Bava Basra? From Bava Basra, we know Rabbi Meir holds when you own the two trees, you own the property. All the Bikurim Mishnah and Bikurim should have said is, if it's your property, you bring. Why does the Mishnah Bikurim get involved in this machlokes? Zok to Marmi, the Katani Mishnah Yisrael. Bibalt, the Mishnah Bikurim is very extra. It's presenting above a Basra Shaila when we're talking about Bikurim. Michdi, Tana Lady Yesh Karka. We already learned in Bava Basra that when you buy two trees, you're buying property. So Pshita de maybe Bikurim. So it's Pashit. If it's your property, why wouldn't you bring Bikurim from it? Ella Shmamino, from the fact that Tana felt the necessity in Maseches Bikurim to tell us about Reb Meir holds maybe Bikurim, it must be that Mechayev Hoyer Reb Meir af v'lokeach peiros minashim. So, frank the Gemara, that's a very difficult shita to understand because the Torah says not like that. How could you tell me that you could bring Bikurim and you could be kairei even if you don't own the property, even if you don't even own the tree? Vaksiv, it says in the pasuk, Asher Tavi Me'artzecha. You have to bring it from your land. So how in the world could you learn that? How could you possibly tell me that Reb Meir holds a lokeach peiros brings Bikurim? Zok to Gemara, I'll tell you why. Hahu lemu'ute chutz la'aretz. Tavi Me'artzecha is just coming to tell us that peiros in chutz la'aretz aren't mechuyev in Bikurim. Break the Gemara, but there's another pasuk. Vaksivat Moscha. That's Lamuti Admas Ovid Kechavim. If a guy has property in Eretz Yisrael, you buy pears from his property, there you'll be potter. But buying pears from somebody who's a Yid, you're going to be Mechuyev and Bikurim, is how our mayor learns. You gave it to me. What do you mean you gave it to me? I bought these pears. So Gemara, the Yoivs Lizuzi, the Zavni Behu. All it means is you gave me these pears. How did you give me these pears? You gave me money, and with the money, I bought pears. So that's the Gemara. There's a lot of issues that we have to sort out with this Gemara. The first thing I want to start out is a beautiful shtickle of how what a beautiful parsha Bikurim is. So I want to look at her Rashbam, 4 lines up in the skinny lines. Mechayev l'havi Bikurim b'lakeach perisha be'ilam. That Meir was mechayev you to bring Bikurim even if you buy perisha be'ilam. Now normally the way it works is the oizda shebichret kirila kosher bagemi. The first fruits, that's how Bikurim works. The first fruits that blossom, you wrap a gemi around them. So we should know these were the first ones to blossom. These are the ones that you bring for Bikurim. But the Hasidic Shavarim say, "What's happens? You tie a gemi around it, because gemi is Rosh Tevis Gedolim Masay Hashem." The moment a person's fruit starts to blossom, right away it moves on our canyon. He has to acknowledge that everything comes from the Rebbeinu Shalom, the godless of the Rebbeinu Shalom. Okay, now let's talk about the other issues that are a little bit difficult. The first thing that we need to discuss is the Gemara asked the Kasha, how could you say if you buy pears from somebody else, you could be maybe Vikairei? It says, everything Gemara, Frank Toys, why would I need a pasuk to tell me that you don't bring Bikurim from pears of Chutz La'aretz? It's a mitzvah tluyas ba'aretz. Bikurim is something you only do in Yisrael. So do I need a pasuk to tell me that a mitzvah tluyas ba'aretz you don't do Chutz La'aretz? So that's Tosfos' first question. So let's look at this Tosfos. Ahu lamute Chutz La'aretz. V'achinami darash beperek Reishis. Agez. Artzach lamute Chutz La'aretz. V'teimer frek Tosfos. Sai in Reishis agez. Sai by Bikurim. Amai itzrich miyuta. Why would you need a miyut? Ha'omar b'soif perakam de kedushin. Kol mitzvah she tluya ba'aretz. Einin heges al ba'aretz. So why would I need a pasuk to tell me that Bikurim doesn't apply on land in Chutz La'aretz? So one pshat zok Tosfos is mishum de Bikurim is kashul l'basar b'chalaf. We know whenever it talks about Bikurim, it says right after is Reishis Bikurim Mascha, and then the pasuk ends up lo sebashal gdi b'chalevimot. Uv'mechilta behedya makash lahu. So since there's a hekesh, I would have thought that Bikurim, even though tluyas ba'aretz is negay in Chutz La'aretz, so gedayich shenoagin apel Chutz La'aretz kamoi basar b'chalaf. That's why you need a special pasuk. But the Raj Benira, a very beautiful halach, a very beautiful understanding, an insight into what does it mean mitzvah tluyas ba'aretz. Does it mean that it's only relative in Eretz Yisrael, or does it mean the mitzvah itself is a land mitzvah? It's a mitzvah that dictates how the kedusha of the land works. So it's not a mitzvah that's relevant here. Punkt, it's only relevant here. No, it's a mitzvah on the land itself. And let's see what the Rosh says inside. The mitzvah tluya ba'aretz. The loydami letruma u'ma'aser v'chala. Truma, ma'aser, and chala are the textbook examples of a mitzvah tluyas ba'aretz. Over there, the hasam guf hapeiros michayavim b'truma. You know what it means, mitzvah tluyas ba'aretz? When the guf hapeiros have a special kedusha on them, the tevel ninu. Before you're going to be misaking them, they're tevel. So there's a mitzvah on the aretz, on the fruit of the land. Basur and b'chila. The kach chashuv and hein tluyas ba'aretz. Avol bikurim. Ain't a chuyav totally the pears. The chiyuv is not connected to the pears. Ela ba'adam. You could say it's not a mitzvah on the chefza, it's a mitzvah on the gavra. The ain't a sorin ba'achila. There's no isser on the pears. They eat them. Aval pishlei hibrish me bikurim. It's merely the Torah told you give bikurim. Tluyas bar. It doesn't mean punkt. It happens to be relevant in its role. It means it's a mitzvah on the land. We know that the Chiyav Trumas and Meisers don't start until Miruach, until we have a shtickle Gemar Melach. So Muchach Shachiyav Toli Beperis. It's a din in the Peris. Levishi Lo Higi Adain Zman Chiyuva. About the situation of the Peris dictates whether or not there'll be Chiyav on the Peris, shows it's about the Peris. The mitzvah Tluya on the Aretz. It's Tluya on the Peris Aretz. Ava Bikurim Vada Chayvus Agufnin. Bikurim is Chayvus Aguf. Kavoy desor, like the issue to Dina Voy desor. Yalfina maybe Kedushin, Shain Achiv Tali Repairs, Alaba Adam, it's a Chiv on the person. If you're even Mechuyev and Bikurim already, when they're on the tree, that's where the Chiv starts. You put a gemi around it. Kitama Bezech Bikurim, Keded Mafrishim Bikurim, Yerd Adam Sexadeu, Viraya Tensha Bichra, Eshkoil, or Eshkoil Shabicher, Koi Shrei Begami, Voim Arel Bikurim. That's not even pairs yet. The Alva Gabdim Ein Loi, Ein Loi Chayiv Liknois, even though if you don't have, you're not Mechuyev to buy pairs, if it's a mitzvah on the chavta, so if you have a chavta, there's a mitzvah. If you don't have it, you don't have the mitzvah. But on the gaver, maybe you should be mechuyev to go by pairs to be mechayiv yourself to bikurim. You don't have to. You call mokum, it's still chayiv as a gufninu. Kamoy chayiv as tzitzis. Dalva gav dein chayiv liknois talis that kisha ein loy, but still it's still choshev chayiv as a guf. So this is a very important insight into what it means mitzvah tluis baris. It doesn't just mean it's a mitzvah that applies to Eretz Yisrael. It means it's a mitzvah on the land. That's one beautiful, important yesod we need to learn from you. Another beautiful, important yesod is the Gemara asks another kasha. The land of a goy has no chiyuv bikurim. The problem is there's a shaila, there's a vusta machloikis. If a goy could be koina land in Israel, so what this is telling me is I have a pasuk to tell me that a goy has a kinyan in Eretz Yisrael to be mefkir v'kdei dusha. So that's a general machlokes. So mimanashich, if you hold it could be mefkir, if not. What's this admascha lemutna admasaku? So Tosha tells us it's possible that there are Meir Shita who holds yesh kinyan la'akum Eretz Yisrael of kimedei meiser. Maybe this is where he knows it from. Maybe mihachahu the gomar b'chol duchta yesh kinyan. Maybe bikurim is the makor for that alone. Then Tosfos brings down a very fascinating Rashbam. Our Rashbam here says that we have to change the gears in our Gemara because it doesn't just say Admoscha once. It says Admoscha Sai in Parshas Mishpatim and Sai in Parshas Kisova. So it says twice Admoscha. So we're missing a kasha. One Admoscha is Lamut Admosaka. Zok Rashbam, we know to Admoscha is coming to be Mamait, which is Gurish in the Gemara. It's Lamuta if you buy property from a ger. And this is a very big shayla. So let's have a look at the Rashbam, how he treats the Chad Lamuta Admasker. I'm 5 lines from the bottom of the Rashbam. A ger would actually break Bikurim, but he's not Kairei. Why can't a guy be Kairei the Parsha of Bikurim? Avraham Avinu wasn't his father. But also Haikra Lamute, and this pasuk is telling us that Akoina mi Peiros Karka Shaloi, if you buy from Peiros of the Karka of a ger, even though the ger brings Bikurim, he doesn't say Nishbal Avisenu. If you buy from a ger, Loi Mevi, Veloy Kairei, you don't bring either. That's what we learned from Admos. Zog Toisvis Nishdemes. But first he brings down a fascinating Rabbeinu Tam. Rabbeinu Tam says if you garish like the Rashbam, that a ger can't say Asher Nishbal Avisenu. So therefore, we have a very interesting chiddush. So he says over here, because of the Mishnah that says that a ger is maybe beinikaira, because he can't say Asher Nishbal Avisenu Losas Lanu, which is exactly. Oops, I lost my camera. Then again. Played with the wire. Back. Okay, Valdik, you have it back. So Zokti Rabbeinu Tam, unbelievable thing. Mekoyach Mishnah lo hoya maniach Rabbeinu Tam legeim levorach birchas hazim. Rabbeinu Tam would not let gerim make birchas hamazon. Why? Because what do we say? Noid l'chashem alakenu alertchem l'tayva shen chalto lavisenu. L'visheni yachaloyme shen chalto lavisenu eretz tayva. I think, but so a line maker is looking at the demis. So even though partially we discussed this today in Shir, Sima normally means to let him say the Boshim of Elvention. But the problem is, what's the difference? Oh, you mean because normally, because in the olden days, no one benched, the Sima was moichid. Oh, but in our days, when we took the Shir line, A goy shouldn't be able to say, a ger shouldn't be able to say Birchas Hamazon. He can't say this post. And that's what he says. Because he can't say, sorry? It's more than that. The Katani Nami, Kishu Mispalo, when a ger davens, he doesn't say Elokeinu v'Elokei. He says Elokeinu v'Elokei Avos Yisrael, because it's not his father Avraham Avinu. And if he davens from Umid, Omer Elokei Avos Eichem. The ger says if I have to announce to everybody, right? Is
that special siddur for the gerim?
What's that?
Do gerim have a special siddur?
Well, so we don't pass much Rebbeinu Tam. Ulerin there the shaper motzi amar ger lavaysenu ager kunze lavaysenu v'lokaim alon kai Mishnah. We don't pass like the Mishnah like Rebbeinu Tam quoted. Elok Rabbi Yehuda the polagalo k'de isa b'Yerushalm. The Omar Tani b'Shem Rabbi Yehuda ger atzmoi maybe v'koyre. He holds you could bring bikurim and guns. My timer the Omar Kra but Avraham Avinu. He av hamoin goyim saticha. What does that mean? Lisha Avar, up until that point, he was only the father of Aram. Mikan Velech, after HaKadosh Baruch Hu told him, Ki av hamoin goyim, Mikan Velech l'chol goyim. So Mamela, everybody could say about Avraham Avinu that he's our father. And therefore a ger can say it as well. And that's how he fears us, that we hold that a ger avada can bench the same nusach as benching we do, the same tefillah as we do. It was just a very interesting sugya that popped up over here in Bava Basra, so I thought it's worthwhile to mention it. Okay, let's see the Heilige Gemara Vaita. So that was the Shita of Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel. He brought a raya from the fact that there's a redundant Mishnah B'chayris talking about buying Shnei Elanois, that Reb Meir Shita is even if you don't own the land, you could still be maybe B'chayris. Frek the Gemara, Frek Rabba, that cannot possibly be pshat in your mayor, and a very simple raya. Meisiv Rabba, hakoyna ilon echad v'soch shel chaveri. If you bought one tree in your friend's property, where you're for sure only koyna the tree and not the land, even if it's for mayor, maybe ve'enei koyre, you bring bikurim, but you can't read the parasha bikurim. Lefi shaloi kana karka, the Reb Meir. So Reb Meir made it very clear when it's maybe bikurim and maybe and when not. When you're koyna the karka, you're maybe bikurim. When you're not going to the karka, so clearly it's not like Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel, Dr. Mart Yufta. In fact, Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel is Ogish Logan. You can't say Pshat and Reb Meir is that you don't need it to be your property, because Avada, it does need to be your property. The reason why Reb Meir holds by two trees, maybe the Kaira is because you own the property. By one tree, it's maybe Vena Kaira because you don't own the property. What was the whole raya that's an extra Mishnah? No, we'll have to deal with that. Zog to Gemara Vayter. Amar le Rab Shimon ben Al Yochim le Rab Elazar. Rab Shimon ben Al Yochim asked Rab Elazar a shayla. A very interesting shayla and a very interesting response. Let's turn on to Amud Beis. My taima the Rab Meir beila. Rab Meir says maybe the einay kaira. The problem is memanavshir. If you can't see tavi me'artzacha because it's not your land, so then you shouldn't be mechuyev and bikurim. And if you're mechuyev and bikurim, then you should be able to say Yasher Tavi Ma'atzma. So that is the problem. Whatever says that you cannot be kairei, by definition, says there's no chiyuv bikurim. Or umay tam with Rabbanan b'shnei lamis. The Rabbanan have the same thing by shnei lamis. Maybe being a kairei. Why? So Amar Loi, Rabbi Elazar said, how could you ask me such a question in public? Davar sharishonim loy Amar boy tam. The Frierdiker couldn't have an answer to this. Tishaleni bebeis hamerdush kedei levaysheni. You know there's no answer for this question. So B'davka punkt that you ask me in public so that you'll mevaza me by now. I don't know what to answer. But I'm a rabbi said, I don't know. It's not shver at all. Makucha. It's very simple. Why it's maybe Veinei Kaira. Because Dilma Rab Meir, Be'ilo Nechat Sufukim Misaftalei, for Rabbanan B'shnei is Sufukim Misaftalei. Maybe it's not Kalor that the land's not included. Maybe it's a suffix if the land's included. And therefore, the answer is very partial. If it's a suffix if the land's included or not, so I bought something from you, I have a star, I bought from you the trees. The shaila is, does it also include the land? Well, We know Yara Shtar al Tachtainu, Balashal al Tachtainu. Why? Because it's not Mukach in the Shtar that you sold me the land. So Lagabi Dina Choshe Mishpat, we're going to paskin that it's not your land. But Lagabi Dina Yoredeya, Lagabi Yitzhak, maybe it is your land. Maybe you're Taka the land. And if you're Kanye the land, you'll be Mechuyev in Bikurim. So therefore you have to bring Bikurim, but you can't be Kairei because we don't know if you're really Mechuyev. Frank Gemara, read the Brisa. That's not what it says. But Katani, we just learned a minute ago at the bottom of Pe'al Hamad Aleph, Levi Shaloi Kana Karka Divra Meir. It says Vadai Lo Kana Karka. Zokt Gemara, who said that means Vadai? Ema Shema Lo Kana Karka. The Psak Halacha in Bezin will be you don't get the Karka. But who said the Psak Halacha is based on that Vadai you didn't buy the Karka? Maybe the Psak Halacha is based on Yara Shtar La Tachtainu. And therefore you don't get the Karka because the Mehechedesh you do. But it doesn't mean it's not your karka, and therefore there's going to be a chiyuv to bring bikur. So now what you're doing is you're bringing bikur misafek. Break the Gemara. How could you bring bikur misafek? You're bringing it into the Beis Hamikdash, making a gasha. V'leichush the dil mala bikurim ninu. Maybe it's not bikurim, but kama ayil chulun lazar, and you're bringing chulun lazar. So what's the problem with bringing chulun lazar? So the Rashbam brings down two pshatim. Either it says ki yirchak memcha mokim b'zavachta. When you're eating chulin, b'richak mokim atezavech. Chulin you can shech, you can handle out of the Beis Hamikdash. The iatezavech b'kirav mokim chulin shalach. Zok Rashbam, we would learn and apply it. Uadin lechol avos chulin bazar shas. No chulin is allowed in the azar. That's one shot. Or maybe it's only midrabanan. What's the derabanan? Because if you bring pears into the azara, people are going to think, oh, it must be kadosh. But if you then go and eat it, do something with it, people are going to say, hey, you don't have to be makbid on kachim. Because this guy had those fruits of the Zohar. Clearly, they were kachim, and I was eating them. Well, also, those really be kachim. That's what the response is. But Tosh is a very interesting kasha. I don't understand. If you're not allowed to bring chulun lazara, so how could the kohanim walk into the Beis Hamikdash with their normal street clothing before they change? So Zok Toysvis, there's no such thing as you can't bring chulun lazar. If you can bring chulun lazar, here's a big difference. Yeah, it's chulun. You're allowed to bring chulun l'gedach. So let's see Toysvis inside. The chomokim sheyesh ke'ena karava ki hacha sheyesh hagasha t'nufa. Not pshat. It's always just bring chulun lazar. You can bring chulun into the lazar. What you can't do is you can't do something that looks like shtukah like an avodah. The bikurim they would make hagasha to the mizbeach. That's a problem with chulun lazar. However, but chulun that you're not doing anything with that looks like a hakrava, who ain't shaykh isur achnos chulun bazar. About it, there's no isur to bring in stam chulun lazar. The loikin, if that was not the case, lo yilbish koyin big day choil the kodesh lazar. How could a koyin wear big day choil and then walk into the azar? Huh? The Gam Yisrael, exactly like I'm asking. The Gam Yisrael yichnis bazar. The Kamer Bakayim Traba Yachlua. When you have to eat the mincha, sheyoychlu ima chulun the truma. You have to eat chulun and truma with the mincha. You know why? Today shetei nechel lasayva. The kohen has to eat the mincha. The shiur mincha lasayva, which means he has to eat something before. And the Mishnah says beferish, eat chulun with it. So you see clearly you can eat chulun bazar as long as you're not doing a shtikul ma'isa avodah. So the problem here is, how could you say you're bringing bikur misafek? If you're bringing bikur misafek, it's a shaila chulun lazara. Zok to Gemara, I have a patch for that. This is going to get it's going to be a very complicated patch. Zok to Gemara, the makdish lahu. It's speaking where you have to be makdish. So you're makdish to bikurim. Frank Gemara, if you're makdish to bikurim, then it's bedek abayis. If it's bedek abayis, the kohen's not allowed to eat it, and the bikurim the kohen's supposed to eat. Well, boy, michlinu, the kohen has to eat it. Zok Gemara, the parklahu. So listen to how complicated it is. You have these pairs, you bring them to the Beis Hamikdash. I mean, you makdish them first. You bring them to the Beis Hamikdash, and then before the kohen eats it, you'll be paid. Correct the Gemara, but then we'll not be kohen. I'm sorry.
It don't take away the problem of bringing.
Ulam Lazara.
Bringing.
Yeah. But then we'll not be kurim. Maybe it's not bikurim, and if it's not bikurim, and you're going to be makdish it, the kamafgalahu mitruma meiser. Bikurim, you don't have to be mafresh trumas or meiser from bikurim, but something that even if you're makdish it, you do have to bring trumas and meisers. So here you're going to pater it from Trumas and Maishers, and now when the coin eats it, the coin's going to be eating Tevel. As Rosh Bam says, Bikurim, if it's real Bikurim, we don't have a problem. But if it's not Bikurim, you have a major problem with Trumas and Maishers. So you see how complicated it's getting? You have to take this suffix Bikurim, you have to be Makdish it, or first you have to be Makdish Trumas and Maishers, then you're Makdish it. Well, actually, you have to bring the whole thing into the base of Mikdash. If you bring it into you're Makdish it, you bring it into the base of Mikdash. You make the Agasha, then you come out of the base of Mikdash, you're Hoidit, you're Makdish Trumas and Maishers, Mineu pay on it, and you give it to the coin. The problem is, what are you going to do to Trumas and Maishers? So you're going to be Makdish Truma Gedola, you're going to be Makdish Meiser Rishon, and you're going to be Makdish Meiser Sheni, or maybe Meiser On, right? So let's see what you do with this. Bishlam Truma Gedola, Yoiv Lola Koin. He can give it to the coin. He's giving the Bikurim to the coin anyway. The coin can eat it. Meiser Sheni, Nami Yoiv Lola Koin. Meiser Sheni, he can give to the coin. The coin will eat it usually. Meiser On, Nami Yoiv Lola Koin On. He can find the coin and only to give it to. And the Meiser Rishon the Levi. The Meiser Rishon goes to the Levi. Leman Yoiv, who's he going to give it to? Zakta Gemara, the Yoiv the coin. You can give it to the coin. Karabbalazim and Azariah. The Tanya we learned. Truma Gedola the coin. The Meiser Rishon is the Levi Divrei Rabbi Kiva. And Rabbalazim and Azariah, Aimer Meiser Rishon the coin. Now, Tosfos tells us, Shram tells us that after Ezra went up to Eretz Yisrael for the second base of Mikdash, and the Leviim didn't come with him, he counted them. So exactly what was the Knas is as follows. Rabbi Kiva held before the Knas, Truma went exclusively to the Kohanim, and Levi went exclusively, Meiser went exclusively to the Levi. The Knas was, you can give it to the Kohen as well. On the flip side, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah held that even before the Knas, you can give it to the Kohen or to the Levi. And after the Knas, they made up the Ezra, you can only give it to the Kohen. But upon him, you have a you can give Meiser Rishon to the Kohen. Fact Gemara, but you still have a problem. The Dilma Bikurim Nidu. You're telling us maybe they Nikayr. But if it's real Bikurim, Ubo Kriya. You have to make a Kriya. You have to say the Parsha of Bikurim. That's the halacha there. So how are you going to do it? How are you going to do the Kriya? So as to Mechfreg to do the Kriya, what's the big deal? It's Psukim. Hechtin to wasn't Bikurim, you said Psukim to Beis HaMikdash. The Gemara is going to ask that question soon. But the Gemara asks, Kriya, the Kohen has to wait till the process, the whole ceremony, then he could eat it. Zok Gemara, Kriya loy mekeves. Kriya is not mekeves. Correct the Gemara v'loy. The Amar Abzera, Kala Royal Lubila, and Bila Makeves boy. The She'ene Royal Lubila, Bila Makeves. There's a rule that whenever there's a process required as part of the avoid of a carbon, if the Torah repeats it twice, then you have to do it no matter what. But if the Torah doesn't repeat it twice, all the Torah means is that it has to be possible for you to do it, but you don't actually have to do it. Where was this relevant? By the Menachos. The halacha would be that a mincha, the largest size mincha that somebody could donate in one keli, would be 60 isarim, and he would mix it with oil. I believe it was an isarin of oil, no, or how much oil was in the mincha? Whatever the amount of oil was in the mincha, it was able to. I'm sorry.
Same as one.
Same as one.
One.
So it's a revius. Okay. So
say, is
I mean, it was a bigger, different mincha. Okay. So the halacha is the maximum size mincha you can bring is 60. Why? Because the oil that you bring with it can mix in and create like a mixture with the amount of oil up to 60 Yisrael. But if you had 61 Yisraelim in the keli, then it's going to be possible. Because there's no way you'll be able to mix all that flour into the oil. So Zok Reb Zeir, you don't actually have to mix the flour with the oil. So if you don't have to mix the flour with the oil, who cares how much flour there is? Zok Reb Zeir, you have to be able to mix the flour with the oil. If you could mix the flour with the oil, which is up to 60 Yisroinim of flour, ain't bila makeves. You don't actually have to mix it. It just has to be shiurim that are mixable. But if it's so much flour that you couldn't possibly mix the oil into it evenly, then bila ma'akeves. So at the end of the day, the rule is when it comes to kachim, you have to be able to do it. If you're not able to do it, then you'll have a problem. Here, there's a chiyuv to do kriya, but you're not able to. And if you're not able to, then it would be ma'akev. So if it would be ma'akev, we're stuck again. Because here you have a scenario where you're trying to bring bikurim, maybe veinikaira, but you can't bring it because you're going to have a problem. You can't do the kriya, and you have to do the kriya. Zog to Gemara, you create a technicality that makes it that this bikurim will be potter from kriya. Because there are bikurims that are potter from kriya from the beginning. For instance, the bikurim of a ger, according to one shita, is maybe veinikaira. There's a lot of things that are maybe veinikaira. So how do you make this into a maybe veinikaira? The ovid lahu. So you might ask me, what do you mean? This is a case of maybe veinikaira. No, here's a big difference because the etzem, the bikurim as it is mechuyev. The problem is you have a suffix that's not letting you do it. If meikar didn't maybe veinikaira like a ger, there you don't need the bila. But here, be'etzem, you need the kriya. Nervos, you can't because it's a suffix. That's going to be a problem of so we have to make it that this is not a mincha, this is not a bikurim that requires kriya. How do you do that? The Avad Luk Rabbi Yosy bar Chanin, the Omar Botron v'Shagran b'Yachliah. What if you cut down the fruit and you didn't deliver it to Yerushalayim? You send it with a shliach, or a shliach cut it and the shliach was on his way to take it. Umei shliach b'dech and he died. So now you have to get someone else to bring it. In all these cases, it's maybe veinei kaira. My timer, the pasuk is v'lakachta, and then near that it says ve'vesa. And we learn turning on to pebezim and aleph, lakicha v'havo ka'ech, and the aleph changes it to be'ech. It has to be one person that does the lakicha and the avo. What is the lakicha? There's problem. The lakicha is cutting it from the tree. Tosfos learns the lakicha is taking it from your house. Or whatever the case is, if there's two people involved, it's going to be potter from kriya. So you might ask, so how does this help? So then weiter it should be possible because it started off with a chi of kriya. So this is Tosfos is kasha. So let's stop for a second. Tema frek Tosfos, right at the top of Amud Aleph. Tema haniru lekriya. Originally, when it was growing, when you cut it, it was going to be bikurim that you have to make kriya on. You messed it up later. V'nitchu. And because of having a mess up that you sent it with somebody else, that means it was a type of bikurim that needed kriya, and now you can't make kriya anymore. It's the same problem as argamah. You're covered. If anything, those should be left to rot. It's possible to be bikurim. Kedamar abzei perk basra the makas. Hivrish bikurim l'fnech. The halacha is any bikurim that you bring before sukkahs, you're maybe bikurim. If you bring bikurim from sukkahs to Chanukah, it's maybe ve'einei kairi. So what happens if you were mafresh to bikurim before sukkahs, which means when you were mafresh it still had a chi of kriya on it, but you didn't bring it till after sukkahs. So you had a chi of kriya, but after sukkahs you can't make kriya anymore. I'm not sure why. Your kavu, mishum de koidem hachad have a chazi lekriya, v'achar kachsu lechazi. The chaz of lumitam zeh hasam ein ruim lebila. The bila makavis ben. The tircha ben Chaim is very simple. The hach ayri kegon jahaya bedaitoi mitchila kishabotron l'shagun bi'arachet. It was never mechuyev in kriya. You know why? Because your original kavana was to send it. So when you're cutting it down, it already wasn't mechuyev in kriya. So that's what you'd have to do here. When you take the payers from the fellow, you'd have to right away have in zinin that you're going to send it with somebody else, and you have to be makdish it, and you bring it into the zara and you make that gasha. Then you're pointed, then you're married for shumas and maestris, and then you give it to the kohen. So that's the explanation of maybe being the kara of her mayor by 2 trees, and the mayor by 1 tree, and the rabbanon by 2 trees. It's a very complicated ordeal how you would do it. Well, like you don't have that. Frank the Gemara, why can't you just make kriya? What's the big deal? Make the kriya. It's psukim. Amal rabacha b'redi rabavi l'rabach. You make the psukim in it. The whole part should be korban psukim in kisavai. Likru. The v'zav v'shlechta by yidzok apok psukim in the base of mikvah. Amal lei mishum the mechsek shik. It looks like sheker. Sharei b'shvil avos b'kurim kakari. We know he's saying it because you brought the payers. but there's a suffix that it might not be his karka. V'shem alav v'karka shizloi godloi become a shaker. Uksiv doiver shkorim lo yikon lo negedainai. In the middle of my base of mikdash, you're going to say sheker. Stimulating it in the pasuk, it's not a problem. But you're reading it while you're bringing the bikurim. That's already mechsek shikr. We're afraid that if he says the parsha bikurim, he might think, hey, I don't have to take off trumas and maisers because he'll think it's regular bikurim. That's one shot. Yeah, either other people won't be mafresh trumas and maisers, or this guy himself. He might not be mafresh trumas and maisers because he'll say, hey, yeah, I'm saying the parsha bikurim. Therefore, we can't let him say it. Since we can't let him say it, the only way we could not passel the bikurim is if he hasn't zidden right away when he's cutting it or buying it, that he's going to be sending it with somebody else to the Beis Hamikdash. Okay, Baruch Hashem, we were zoicha to finish Pei Aleph. Beis Hashem tomorrow. We're going to learn Pei Beis. Everyone should have a gittig, a bench to